Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thursday night on Telling Tales. It's the Cincinnati Chronicles, of course, our ongoing World of Darkness anthology series, telling 5 tales set in the same city on the same day in the mid-90s. The best of all decades, as everyone who is also exactly as old as me will tell you. So, it's our Wraith the Oblivion finale tonight. I hope everyone's excited in a suitably dread-filled and existential fashion. And before we bring our players on and start talking recaps, let's do our usual promo and get that out of the way. If you check the links below, you'll find YouTube and Twitch. You're watching this on one of those two. Why not check out the other? All of our Twitch streams end up on our YouTube. There are vast catalogs now, and by that I mean fairly reasonable sized catalogs for YouTube of us playing lots of different systems. There's also links to our social media, our Discord, and our Patreon. If those kind of things interest you, then please do check them out. We currently run 3 weekly series. Mondays is Warhammer that Sam is running. Wednesdays is Into the Odd that I'm taking care of, although soon we will be returning to our kind of big old unintentional flagship series of Symbaroum. And obviously Thursdays is Cincinnati Chronicles. We're wrapping up Wraith tonight. And then in a couple of weeks' time, we'll be picking up with our final arc of Changeling the Dreaming. So that's something to look forward to. We also run one-shots monthly on Saturdays, about once a month. The last one was a week and a half ago and was Mork Borg. That's up on the channel. It's quite a good one, if I do say so myself. And this Saturday, in fairly short order from the last one, unusually, our very own, Cincinnati's very own, sort of Pierre will be running Absurdia, which is a lovely new indie RPG in early access. So yeah, come check that out this Saturday, 3:00 in the afternoon, British Standard Time. Although obviously your own time zones will also suffice. You just have to do the calculation because Google exists. We're not going to do it for you. God damn it. Yeah, there we go. Ended my plug with my usual needless aggression. And now we'll start bringing on those players. I seem to have put to one side my note of the order of them, but it's fine. I can see it now. So first off, we have John. John plays Abby, frustrated former children's author, wannabe noir author. I say former because, you're dead. As are all of our characters, being members of the Restless, the ghostly wraiths of the title of the system. John, how did things start last time for Abby and her friends isn't the right word. Fellow player characters.
Yeah. Colleagues, work colleagues.
Yes.
They started with making steps towards some form of safety, and on their way encountered their good dear friend who would never betray them, Emily Perfect, who was being harassed by a bunch of other Restless who had been at the library. Who were rightfully slightly aggrieved and may have made a connection between the events and Emily Perfect. We managed to convince them to calm down and leave her alone, and Emily pointed towards, or it gave the description of one of her other customers who was definitely more suspect than she was. It was an old man with big watery eyes or something, right? I can't remember his exact description.
Big sad eyes, kind of soulful, kind of puppy dog eyes. But yeah,
that's it. And as soon as they'd left, Emily broke down and admitted that no, it was her. That the old man really existed, but also it was her, and that she had been given a lot of money for it. At which point, Abby started to get a little bit fighty because, understandably, her niece's life was literally on the line. People eventually managed to talk her down, but not before we took an ingot of soul steel from Emily and pressured her into agreeing to many services and more money once the current situation had resolved itself.
Absolutely. So yeah, the whole of kind of events of the first half of the story that set off this spiraling cataclysm nearby was a conspiracy between Emily Perfect, the still unnamed old man, and a mysterious individual called Lord Malachite, who is probably someone who's cropped up in this story before.
Abby, in fact, double checked Emily's memories and verified that it was Lord Malachite is imaginatively
I was
the man
just speaking in vague terms. That's all,
and also
to be entertaining. So
that's fair. Also verifying that the old man was really there.
yes,
I'm not saying that because that turns up later or anything.
Absolutely. So moving on from there and desperately seeking some form of safety, let's bring on our second player, Inga, who plays Tammy, a youthful tennis player cut off in her prime. Inga, how did things go down next?
Yeah, we decided to head towards Tarek, who can sort of manipulate appearances. And along the way, we came across a few things. We came across some legionnaires who Ronan was spotted by them, and he managed to sort of talk his way out, but it seemed like he was on some sort of list they had. So there's something going on there. And at some point after that, Tammy just sort of suddenly got overwhelmed by this weird, vision, and she had this very strange feeling of peace, even though she was seeing something totally horrific that she knew must be absolutely terrifying. Like a big rent in the tempest just opened up, and she could see the wreckage of a European city, and a weird odd clarity. It had exactly 13 black figures rising over the horizon. It was weirdly calm, even though she knew she should be terrified. And there was 1,000 whispers all just coming in at her, all saying Gehenna. Which she didn't know what it meant, but Brian did once she sort of snapped out of this weird vision that it wasn't actually happening in front of her, it turned out. And he recognized it as some sort of bad place from the Bible, some sort of burning, awful, hellscapey type nastiness. So that was not ideal. And then later on, as part of the journeys as well, we also ended up coming across a young girl who's just 5 or 6 years old, quite young, who was able to see Tammy and speak to her. And she said that there was somebody else like us, the sort of very pale, ghostly type figure down in the basement. And it was some sort of old man. We kind of figured it must be another wraith. We were kind of split. A couple of us wanted to just carry on to safety. And but Brian and Abby wanted to go down and check it out, whether it was that we could maybe get some sort of curry favor with this person, or maybe they have some sort of cash that might be helpful to us. So they head down into the basement to check it out. And what do you know? It turns out to be the bedraggled old man who called himself Jasper that Emily had seen. And of course, Abby, because she had the memory that she saw through Emily's eyes, actually recognizes him properly. So he didn't seem to, before that kind of memory clocks, this guy didn't seem that fussed about the maelstrom and the warnings and was telling them to just leave him alone. But once it sort of clocks, again, another big tear opens up in the tempest, and he kind of darts through before they can grab hold of him or do anything. So don't know where he's gone. It looked dangerous and scary. And Abby and Brian come out and tell us about it. But yeah, mysterious things going on.
But what would Cincinnati Chronicles be without another unresolved subplot? So let's bring on our third player of our group, Pierre. Pierre plays Ronan Kayat, who was a tailor and also maybe mob mediator in life. How do you proceed from there, Pierre?
Well, as John alluded to, we went to see Tariq, who is a famous masker within the Wraith world. We went to see, in order basically to change our forms so that we would pass perhaps unrecognized through the safety of the Citadel walls. Tariq was a bit difficult to convince to assist us, but in the end, we parted with the soul steel bullion that we had taken off of Emily Perfect as payment for our protecting her. And yeah, so now we're just as poor as we started, but we now have new faces. instead of what we once had. And then we progressed onwards, hoping to get to the safety of the citadel, when we encountered a familiar location and character, but not to us, to the world of darkness, the Spindrift Diner, where there was a strange fellow by the name of Marshall, who was sitting under a street lamp reading.
I believe he was sitting on the hood of his car, actually.
Yes, sitting on the hood of his car, reading by the light of the street lamps, was it? I think.
Yeah, it's nighttime now, so yeah.
Yeah, his I can't remember what was the book that he was reading.
A copy of The Once and Future King by T.H. White.
The Once and Future King by T.H. White, and next to him, incredibly enraged, was a drone of some kind who seemed to have been foiled in its plans and machinations and just wanted to destroy this fellow for some reason. This strange individual. And then we progressed on our way. I briefly spoke to the drone, but then just left it to its
As
madness.
with most drones, you couldn't get any sense of it. It was just clearly some being who felt that Marshall had foiled and destroyed him in some way and was demanding vengeance upon Marshall and all his descendants forevermore. But you couldn't provide that, nor would you be particularly inclined to, so you all moved on. That brings us to the last member of our group, last but by no means least, which I think I referred to him by yesterday as well, or last week or something. It's Chris.
I'm beginning to feel a bit least, if I'm not.
No, you're the most, Chris. Chris plays
That's
Brian, kind of slightly archaic kind of computer programmer or computing language programmer, and all round grump, which keys in nicely with Chris's other characters, or one specific one anyway.
Yeah, so what happened next? We generally trying to make our way towards this place of sanctuary to keep ourselves, to see if we can blag a way in with our new faces, kind of threading backwards and forwards through what seems to be quite a residential area, or at least a dense but residential area. And the first thing we heard, I think, before we saw a bunch of legionaries, a bunch of kind of agents of the kind of big syndicate of organized dead, and we almost all got caught, but for some fast footwork and canny rolling by the group. And we noticed that what seems to be happening is they are patrolling around the kind of the vicinity of this place, finding all of the dead, and kind of seems to be corralling them into places unknown, but probably not all that great.
They're kind of clearing the no man's land that has been set out in front of the walls of the citadel, which doesn't sound great.
So we kind of scooched around a bit and kind of hiding behind a wall or a little fence to kind of just put a little obfuscation between us and them, and overheard a conversation between one of the legionnaires indicating that they would kind of, they'd be up for an out. They just kind of want to get behind the walls themselves. But unfortunately, before we were able to kind of maybe make a deal with the devil, as it were, they moved on, and so did we. And then from the skies above, like that goddamn tank boss in the Final Fantasy VII missile range that keeps dropping down on you like 7 times, the flipping Spectre from episode 2 turns up again and finally confronts me. And may I add, this Spectre was summoned by my shadow, Pierre, and is now here to basically team party kill us.
Absolutely, and we will pick up exactly at that point. With you're moving, the Shadowlands around you is sort of becoming less and less sort of adjoined to the Skinlands and more like just this wrecked wasteland, and dropping down from a rooftop above, the towering figure of the Spectre from the public library, a vast humanoid skeleton with a bleeding kind of dog, like from a dog carcass, a head from a dog carcass with copious blood dripping from every pore. That's dropped down in front of you and is raking towards you, especially Brian with its glittering obsidian claws. So might be time for some initiative, folks. Let's go into that. So your initiative is generated by adding your dexterity and wits together as a single number and then rolling a d10 and adding to that. If you pop it in private chat, then John will set our initiative up for us. First time we've been in kind of like strict combat circumstances in Wraith. Probably only like the second or third or fourth time in this entire anthology series, but there we go. I should probably calculate the Spectre's initiative as well. Let's say it has an initiative of, let's say what I've rolled, which is 14. Chris can go first. He's play character, which is probably for the best, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm not going to lie. I've been thinking about this all week, and unfortunately, I'm just going to run back towards the Legionnaires.
No, yeah, like they are some way away from you now. Like I think we definitely proceeded on a fair bit between the two, but at least run kind of back and away from where, the Spectre's kind of dropped down in front of you. For those purposes, I think like the main thing to just roll is a dodge, because it's definitely swiping for you first. So we'll take care of your turn and the Spectre's turn right here. So if you give me a dexterity plus... Oh, there's no dodge in...
There's no dodge.
I guess that's dexterity plus athletics then?
Well...
Sure.
That's 2 successes. That's grand. That's 100% success rate.
2 successes versus the Wraiths. The Wraiths definitely more than that. What I will do then, I think your dodges actually just reduce the Wraith's successes with that, but because melee successes in World of Darkness aren't affected by the degree of success, I don't think it makes any particular difference. Defensive. Here we go from Inga. Defensive moves are a roll against willpower, or use of a willpower point. I think presumably also dodge moves. It could be then, because like Wraiths aren't bound by maybe. Have you got a page reference for that, Inga?
330 on the PDF.
330.
Attack rolls are made. You can announce a defensive action during the initiative stage, like any other action. So block, dodge, and parry. Oh, so dodge, dex plus athletics. Sorry,
okay.
Action. There we go.
That's spot on. I guessed right then. So there we go. Cool. Yeah, so I'll just reduce its potential damage to you by... No, I won't. That's not how it works at all. Roll your soak, please, Brian. Which is just your stamina, which is 1, I can see here. You're on mute, Chris.
I did succeed with a 9.
Okay, so that's 1 point less. Chris, the Spectre has rendered you for 5 corpus.
That's all of my corpus.
Well, it's not all of your corpus because it hasn't gone to... Well, all your corpus is lethal damage.
No, I imagine that was lethal.
That was lethal, yeah.
So all of my corpus... Oh, does it push out the bashing as well then?
No,
it doesn't. It replaces it. It replaces.
Yeah. Your bashing will become lethal if it overlayers, and it's only if your tracker fills up with lethal or aggravated damage that you are dispersed and forced into a harrowing.
Well, that's an ouch from me.
Sure. So the Spectre kind of with an odd, unsettling kind of tittering noise, has just lunged forward extremely quickly, lashed out with its the long, lanky bones of an arm, and rent through the center of Brian, and like plasm from his torso just kind of dissipates and fades across the Shadowlands street, as he kind of reels backwards, sort of starting to kind of like flicker and bleed at the edges, as I imagine that's quite a lot. So are you on like 5 bashing and 5 lethal now, or something like that?
Yes.
Yeah. Brian is in significant danger. Abby.
I mean, I also kind of want to run away,
Sure.
but there's nothing else useful I can do. Can I try and drag Brian out away from the Spectre?
Yeah, sure. Why not? Why don't you give me a strength plus athletics roll?
Okay. Hang on, let me just double check what my willpower is currently at. I'm going to spend a willpower.
Sure.
That is 3 successes.
Okay, I think that's more than enough to kind of reach out and grasp at, I say Brian's clothes, they're not really clothes, they're part of his being, and sort of yank him away from a further swipe by the Spectre, and sort of, are you kind of like stumbling backwards, kind of hanging on to Brian and trying to get him out of the reach of it, sort of thing?
Yes. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good. Ronan.
Okay, so is there like, do specters like rest on the floor, or are they like floating?
It varies from spectre to spectre. This one certainly seems to kind of, its kind of bony clawed feet are sort of resting on the floor. Yes.
Okay, so because my only thought was, if it's about to try and chase Brian, if I think that that's what's going to happen, I was wondering if potentially I guess this is also another thing, is like if there's anything that I can use rot or decay on to like get in its way, or obstruct it in any way, or slow it down.
Sure. So maybe something it's standing on, or something like that.
If is it resting on anything that like could give way, or anything like that?
Well, how about, you know what? Why don't you roll and see how well you do, and then I'll adjudicate how much of an impact that has with something it's standing on, or what have you. I take it you've got the system there, and can
dexterity plus flux, and I have to spend a pathos if it's rot. And I can do it at range if I spend willpower, which I can do.
Okay.
So dexterity plus plus flux is 7 dice. So I'm going to roll.
You've got what the difficulty is there. Is it the shroud or something?
Yeah, the difficulty I believe is I think what is the difficulty is local shroud rating.
Okay, I'm going to start doing funny things with the shroud at this point, because the storm is coming, folks. The Shadowlands is tearing away from the Skinlands. So I'm going to take, at the moment, every shroud roll will be at 1 reduced difficulty from where it should be. And I think this is should be at 7, so I'm going to knock it down to 6.
Okay.
Because you're kind of on a slightly dingy side street in the city centre.
Yeah, I didn't get the impression that there were loads of people around or anything like that.
No.
Well, I got 2 successes. So
is that kind of 4 damage-ish? 4 lethal damage. Something like, does it double the successes or something like that?
I don't think it says that the storyteller determines the effects. 2 successes, it affects the thing for 1 month.
Okay, no, that's fine.
That's
you know what?
How much aged it is, I guess.
Sure, absolutely. And what the Spectre is going to do, there is a kind of car parked just kind of nearby where it's landed from the top of a building. And it's got one kind of bony foot kind of wrapped around this car as it's kind of reaching down to swipe again at Brian. And that car kind of like, with a creak and a kind of rusty splintering, the top of the roof of that car kind of collapses down and sends the Spectre kind of like bowling forwards unexpectedly. It lets out a sort of noise and sort of doesn't sprawl to the floor completely, but kind of holds on one hand and like reaches out and claws again. But clearly it's not in an, like, it's going to have to scramble up to its feet again. You know what I mean? So you have definitely put a kind of crimp in its style for the moment at least. And that brings us to Tammy.
I am really trying to figure out if I want to try and Arcanoi punch this guy or get on the move. He's kind of like stumbled down and stuff. Does he look a bit incapacitated? Like, is it like, or
no,
is it like,
it just needs to kind of scramble up to its feet. It hasn't kind of taken any damage or anything. It's still
right.
there, and it's still like, you know, 20 feet tall.
Across the shroud. Why not? Let's do it. So I'm going to try my stone hand punch. Is
this an outrage thing?
Yes, it is. Yeah. So I can spend 1 pathos to make a normal brawl attack. And then if it hits, I can spend additional pathos to add more dice to the damage pool as well.
Sure.
So I think that's Dex plus Brawl for...
Yeah, it's this is using outrage on target in the underworld has a difficulty of 7.
Oh, sorry, I meant to ask that. Is that? I think I have to use some. I think I have to use Skinlands. I have to like I'm using that strength somehow. What does it say? It says it must touch a Skinlands target effectively using stone hand punch to convey its normal strength across the shroud. So I'm punching someone in the shroud. There has to be a Skinlands target nearby. Is there anyone that I could?
Oh.
Otherwise, I'll
run. Must touch a... No. I get how you've read it here, but what it means is that you... if you're punching something in the Skinlands, you have to be able to reach them. But if you're doing it in the underworld, you can actually do it at range. You don't have to close.
Great, I won't even get closer then.
Sure. So it's a difficulty of 7. It says 7 in the Shadowlands, 6 in the Tempest. I'm actually going to make this 6 because I think you are now closer to the Tempest than the Shadowlands.
Okay, cool.
So go ahead with the difficulty 6.
I think my shadow is gonna. How many are you offering there?
Oh, Chris looks like he's offering 6 dice there.
Frozen in time, offering a full handful.
5 dice, wasn't it?
How many? I can count.
I think it's
6.
a maximum of 5. Yeah, is it?
But
yeah.
Sorry, I'm back.
Is that 5 dice being offered?
Let's be a bit more realistic because obviously, as you're a shadow, I have there's a benefit for me in you dying, so I'll give you 3 dice.
I will take the 3 dice.
Yeah.
All right. So difficulty 6, yeah?
It is difficulty 6, yeah.
Do I want to use a willpower? Oh, yeah, I'm going to use a willpower as well. So there's one less. That's 4 successes knocked off by 1 bot. So 3 on the dice plus my willpower makes 4 successes. My 1 was not on a shadow die. Sorry, Chris.
Well, so that is a success. And now you have to roll your damage. You're spending an extra pathos to add your outrage to your damage pool.
Totally am, yeah.
Yeah. So how many dots have you got in outrage?
2.
And your damage pool will just be your strength because it's a punch. So that'll be your total.
So a total of 5 there. I'm just adding up all the dice, right? Oh, sorry, it's been ages since I've done damage.
No, you are rolling them.
Yeah, I'm rolling them. So, okay, right, cool. So that's 10, 25.
Oh, no, sorry. It's the individual successes. It's like a normal
Oh, sorry.
difficulty.
So it is.
Sorry.
So it is. I'm with you. I remember how this works. Sorry, is that over 6 then? Successes?
Yeah.
Successes. Yeah, that's 2 successes then. Sorry.
Okay. It has soaked 1, but you kind of swing out with your stone hand punch. And I'm going to say that when it's done in the underworld at range like this, you basically send like a kind of wave of force from your hand that knocks into the thing. You can't see any kind of cracked bones or significant damage you've done, but it definitely kind of moves it. The whole kind of like 20-foot frame of this thing kind of reels slightly as you do it, and kind of it rears its head round at you and opens its mouth, distended far wider than even that huge corpse-like dog head should, and kind of howls with a noise more akin to like the squealing of a slaughtered boar than any kind of dog-like canine creature. And it leaves a great kind of wash of sickly, blood-drenched sputum kind of like splattering across your form as it does so. You seem to have hurt it at least a little bit, but not, hugely.
Then I'm going to turn and start running direction.
Well, we're round to the next action round, folks. Are any of us not running from the at least temporarily incapacitated spectre? That's what I thought. So, can we please have dexterity plus athletic? Oh no. Pierre.
I was just going to say, she did a really good punch. It's nearly dead. There's an opportunity to finish off your foe once and for all right here.
My foe is inefficient coding and interns.
Well, as you say.
No thorns of any kind used there, Pierre. Just
no, not yet.
Oh, you were just role playing. Fine. Yeah. So are we all running away then? That's dexterity plus athletics rolls, please.
I will shadow offer some dice to Abby if she wants to.
See, that's what constructive shadows do.
All right. I'll offer you 4 dice.
This is turning into a shadow bidding war.
I will accept those dice from Inga.
Are you accepting my offer?
I will accept the offer.
Oh, I'm glad I accepted those.
I got 0 successes, including a 1.
Oh, so a botch then.
If it cancels out, is it a botch?
No.
Okay. It's only if you get no successes at all, and also one of those no successes is a 1.
No.
So it's not a botch, it's just a 0 success.
It's just a fail.
Even with my shadow dice, I come out flat fail.
4 successes.
1 success.
Okay. Tammy is a kind of slightly receding figure, kind of halfway down the street, really, pounding pavement to get away from this thing. Brian is kind of huffing his way along a fair way behind Tammy, but still making some progress. Ronan and Abby, I'm going to say you basically ran into each other in your hurry to get away, and kind of stumbled apart and kind of picked yourself up on a nearby wall. But you are basically trying to pick yourselves up as this spectre is like rearing back to its feet behind you. It is in fact going to split its action between kind of like rising to its feet and swiping out. So it's not swiping out with as much force as it usually would. And I'm going to randomly generate which of you it's deciding to try and tear apart. And that is Ronan Kayat. So with that in mind, given that you were trying to run away and just failed, I'm going to say that you're not particularly going to sort of get a chance to dodge this. It does in fact hit you. Could you roll your soak, please, which is just your stamina? 2. Okay. Didn't someone get swiped by the it was Ronan, wasn't it, who got swiped by the Spectre back in the library?
Yep.
Okay. Well, you feel the unpleasant, familiar sort of I guess sort of shimmering, sharp pain of those claws raking through your plasm again. It only catches you with the very tips, though. That's 1 point of lethal corpus.
That's very good. I was rolling 2 dice as well. So
that's not bad. That's not bad. Okay, I think we're bound to the next round, honestly, because we all just ran away, apart from the Spectre, or tried to anyway.
Before we go on to the next round, Ronan, why don't you have another go? I believe in you.
I don't believe in myself.
I am offering you another action in exchange for 1 less pathos and 1 more angst.
I lose a pathos.
And I gain an angst. But you get an extra action, and that's the important thing.
Now you see, the Pierre identity of acceptable deals has to accept this. So I will pay a pathos to be able to try running away additionally. Cool. So I sort of scramble to my feet.
Yeah, spurred on by the pain.
Yeah. And attempt again.
Another dexterity plus athletics roll then, please.
4 dice. Again, 0 successes.
Perfect. Perfect behavior. Oh, another shadow.
Can't believe they've let this thing get to you like this. You've got to get out of the way. Just leave, Ronan. You've got to get out of here. This awful person, he's just slowing you down. You've got to get out. Abandon him. Let the Spectre take him instead.
I think as the shadow says this, I slip and again fail to get up.
You slip down again as Abby's
and
going.
Look ever more pathetic.
Yeah. Abby, help me! I can't get up.
I think he's had a fair chance.
Okay, well then, Brian, you are kind of slowly making your way away from this Spectre. Abby and Ronan are kind of like scrambling around on the ground, fairly unsuccessfully trying to get away. And Tammy is quite a way ahead of you. Are you just going to carry on running?
Please.
I'm probably not. There's precious. Oh, there is something I can do. I'm going to try and catch its attention.
Okay, I mean that's probably fairly easy for you as its ultimate target. What are you attempting?
Just going to yell a very obtuse curse about someone who attempts to calculate Rex variables by totaling based on the final initiator and not iterating through them via loop.
We've all been there. Is this any specific like arcane or anything? You just basically trying to distract it and get its attention?
It's not, but I suspect I have some dots in intimidation and expression and stuff that I could use just for a normal.
Sure. Well, how about it's going to be manipulation plus. I'd say I'm actually looking at your character sheet. That's my example I'm looking at this session. So I'm going to say it's actually either performance or subterfuge, which you don't have any points in. But you do have 4 manipulation. So why don't you roll manipulation? And you know what? I'm going to give you a difficulty of 5 here because this Wraith, this Spectre is primarily after you. So
it's for me. Wow, that's 4 full successes.
Wow. Brian kind of shouting, waving his hands. Yelling in kind of like just you can't understand the nonsense that's coming out of his mouth. Something about computers probably, and you're kind of waving and crossing your hands, doing a proper kind of Ian Malcolm on this thing, and the Spectre sort of rears to its feet and starts lunging forwards towards Brian and kind of forgetting Abby and Ronan, who are still kind of scrambling on the floor where it was. It is going to again try to split its pool in order to get to Brian. So that means it'll do yes. Brian, you don't have any kind of dodge roll. So if I can try and not drop my dice, that would be good. That's that. Can you roll soak for me, please? Sorry, you're on mute.
1 success on 1 dice. I'm rolling very
Okay.
well tonight.
So again, the spectre stalks close to where Brian is, as Brian's kind of presumably like backing away from while making this distraction, reaches out with those long, lanky bone arms and rakes through Brian's form again, dealing 2 lethal corpus. Brian is definitely starting to kind of almost look like he's flickering in and out of existence now, and his shadow has something to say about it.
Can't take much more of this, can you? Maybe you should leave them. Leave them.
There we go. Abby?
I think she trying to push her moment of weakness to the back of her mind, and seeing Brian turning around and trying to help, she might in turn try and just drag Ronan to his feet.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Why don't you give me a strength plus athletics roll to try and heft Ronan up?
Oh god.
You're going to need a bit of help with this one.
I'm ignoring you. You've said enough.
Fine. Fail without me.
I dropped it on the floor.
You see.
1 success.
Okay. With the heave, you manage to get Ronan to his feet, but you're not making any forward or backward or sideways motion. You kind of taken your entire turn to kind of heave him back up. But now it's his turn. Ronan, what are you doing?
Okay, seeing that running has failed me, I'm going to try hiding. Is there anywhere nearby that I can see that may be out of eyesight of this creature?
Sure, roll wits plus stealth.
Okay. Wits plus stealth is the same number of dice, but it's a totally different type of action.
Yeah.
Again, 0 successes.
Oh my god. Wow.
Every single time I've had a 1 and a success, and it's just been like, ugh.
So basically, Abby has pulled you to your feet, and you're kind of hanging on her, going, but just nothing's working. Like there's nowhere nearby. Everywhere looks quite easily knock-assideable or reach intoable by this colossal spectre. So the pair of you are just kind of lurking there, pretty helplessly right now, while this spectre is savaging. Just savaging Brian horribly. Tammy,
How far ahead am I? Am I
you're
like
quite a ways away. You're like half the street away.
Oh. I mean, I think if I kind of pause for a second, just kind of realize there's no one behind me, and I look back, like when I say half a street away, like these are big old
you've already made the roll to run fast. I'd say you can make it back to them in another turn by just changing direction.
Yeah. What's kind of ahead of me? Like, how close am I getting back to the citadel and stuff like that now?
You mean you can't even see the citadel walls yet?
Okay, too far from that. I think Tammy will heavily roll her eyes and pause for but an instant before she realizes she has to kind of go back and
turn and try and return. Okay. Well, as you do that and you start going back, can we take initiative off the board, please? Please, John. Brian, you're kind of like tumbling backwards, the spectre looming over you, reaching up those obsidian claws, kind of glittering in the darkness of the sky as it's trying to swipe down again to rend apart your form and send you to the deepest corners of the labyrinth when shots ring out. A couple of scraps of bone explode from the creature's collarbone, and it rears back with a horrible sort of whinnying screech as two of the legionnaires from the patrol you just encountered kind of dash forward from a nearby alleyway, relic guns in hand, spraying fire at the thing. They give a cry, and another couple of legionnaires bound in behind them, one of them kind of wielding a long soul steel blade. The Spectre seems to be perfectly happy to start fighting them right now. You can hear other shots coming from kind of further back the alley, as presumably more legionnaires are kind of like moving towards the growing conflict. One of them, who kind of has dashed forward and is stood near where Ronan and Abby, are like kind of hunched together on one side of the street, kind of turns around and looks at you and goes, looks at you and goes, "What about them?" And one of the kind of more senior looking legionnaires looks over and goes, "Don't recognize them. They're not on the list. Fuck off, you lot."
All right.
I'm gonna.
I don't know why all my legionnaires have kind of like British accents, but that's apparently the way we're going. They're an evil, repressive empire, all right.
Is it because you secretly want to be doing a Warhammer 40k?
No.
Like, I assume all the guardsmen have British
all
accents
the
and that.
Imperial guardsmen have Cockney accents.
Yeah.
I'll do my best to fuck off.
Do you want to roll for it?
No, I really don't. But if I need
I'm
to,
happy for the three of you to kind of scramble towards where Tammy is, kind of like presumably stopped directly approaching the firefight that's breaking out.
Yeah, I kind of limp towards. I'm pretty beat up as well. I think I'm on like 3 corpus. So
absolutely. Well, as you are kind of scrambling away from this growing fight, kind of the Spectre has one of the legionnaires kind of like up, wrapped in its claws, and is like squeezing tightly. He's wailing and kind of thrashing away at it with the butt of like a very old-fashioned, like a kind of like a bolt-action rifle that he's thumping away with as it roars and looks like it's about to bite a chunk out of him. As you're making your way away from this, presumably roughly in the direction of the Citadel, I'm assuming, could you all give me a wits plus alertness roll, please? Pierre, you can reduce the difficulty by 1. Zero from Brian, 0 from Abby. Is that 2 from Pierre? Okay.
Right, 3.
3. Tammy, there is over the course of this conflict with the Spectre, you feel like the Shadowlands has become even further unmoored from the Skinlands underneath. Honestly, now the Skinlands is kind of like only barely visible through the shroud as kind of tremulously wavering outlines of buildings and objects, and any quick around are only kind of like, blurs in old photographs, like caught in that extended exposure. They look like that kind of like faded imagery flickering away behind the Shadowlands you can perceive, which looks very close to the Skinlands, but a much more decayed, wrecked, and kind of like rubble-strewn version of it. And as you pass by a wreckage of a building you're fairly sure is definitely no longer there, even in the Skinlands, you see a figure standing in there, kind of like sort of desperately trying to get the group's attention, sort of waving to come over. He's a very kind of large, bulky-looking man wearing a leather jacket and a white shirt, and some sort of very old kind of leather trousers with studs in the side of them. He's got kind of like, 80s, 90s rocker vibe to him. He's wearing shades and has kind of slightly permed blonde hair down to his shoulders. Ronan, you see Yellow Dog waving at you from some rubble.
Over there!
You know him?
Yeah, that's Yellow Dog.
Finally. Some good luck. All right.
That's our way in.
Yeah?
Abby and Brian, have you got Abby and Brian's attention on this?
Yeah, I'm definitely like indicating on like, let's go.
Sure. As you kind of, if everyone's accompanying you, you kind of dive over this rubble into the wreckage of this building in the Shadowlands. It's you're kind of in this old anonymous building, and next to you, across from you, is like what looks like the rubble of a clock tower. But you can still kind of see the outline of the actual clock tower in the Skinlands, which hasn't collapsed. But the time on it seems to have kind of like frozen in place. The minute hand is not moving, even in the Skidland. In the Skidlands, God, that's an even worse place. The Skinlands. Also, now that you are at least have a moment to breathe, crouched in this rubble with Yellow Dog, you can see that sort of the atmospheric conditions have exacerbated slightly. There are flashes of odd blue, grey, and dark light crackling along the edge of the storm now. That expanding sort of bubble of swirling mist that you saw, back near the library is now visible, like over the city, kind of rising huge in its dimensions, and it's slowly expanding out. That light that's crackling along the edge of the storm is illuminating the dead landscape in odd ways. Cracks and rents into the tempest are appearing regularly in the sky and nearby buildings. And honestly, it is kind of a struggle to be heard over the gale. A deep sound of something distant, like swelling waves, and weirder noises coming from whatever or whoever is gathering at the boundaries of the tempest. Yellow Dog kind of turns to Ronan as you scramble over and goes, "Kayat! Kayat!" And he's kind of like grabbing you and shaking your shoulder. It's kind of just he's a very enthusiastic guy, and he seems kind of pleased to see you.
I'm pleased to see you too, Yellow Dog. Although I wish it was under better circumstances. These are my friends. I hope you have some idea about how to get safe from this maelstrom that's happening.
I ain't getting safe, but I can help you out. But before, are there any other renegades around? Have you seen any others seeking shelter? You gotta tell me, man.
We ain't seen any others.
Just us left. Okay. Well, we're all renegades now. We gotta stick together.
Yeah. So about that, how are we gonna weather this? Do you think? Do you have any ideas? Any ways into the Citadel?
I got a way maybe you could take. I'm doing a different thing. I'm doing my own thing out here. But listen, I could get you behind those walls, maybe. But you gotta do something for me, Kayat. You'll do that, won't you?
Yeah, sure. What do you need?
Look, take he's kind of looking around as if someone is going to be kind of lurking, watching what's going on. No one, like all the Legionnaires are completely occupied. In fact, you can see sorts of oh, am I doing this at the wrong point? Hang on, I'm just double checking my notes. 1 second. God, that's awful. I don't normally have to do that. Am I doing this at the wrong time? Hold on. Oh my God, I've completely lost my way. I do apologize, folks.
This is what happens when you try to run 4 separate timelines simultaneously.
Yeah,
Matt.
this is what happens. Yeah, no, it is the right time. That's absolutely fine. He's kind of looking around in a paranoid fashion, but the Legionnaires are completely occupied. He kind of lingers, looking over at them for a while, and if any of you who kind of like turn to look with him will see that Prime, the fearsome marshal who leads the patrols that you've been dodging all this time, has emerged from that side alleyway himself and is driving the Spectre backwards with great sweeps from a huge executioner's axe. Yellow Dog kind of nods in an emotion you can't really read, and reaches inside his leather jacket and pulls out a quite simple looking silver pocket watch, complete with chain. He sort of thrusts it towards you, Ronan, and is kind of like, to the point where he's kind of like shoving it into your hand.
Thanks. What is this?
Here it is. Look, keep it safe. Don't ask questions. Get it to this broad called Urania. She knows what it is. Kinda. She has a shack. One of her people does. Old guild types. It's up against the walls. Looks abandoned. You gotta bang on the doors 5 times. 5 times, Kayat. And I mean hard, hard. They'll take you through. Probably. Even if they don't, you got nothing to lose compared to being out here. We got a deal?
Yeah, we got a deal. Thanks.
All right. You do that, and you keep the flag flying. The flag flying. Yeah. He kind of reaches again into his leather jacket and pulls out rather a large handgun.
Now, let's not get too wild.
Oh, don't you worry about yourself, and don't worry about me either. I've got a gun. I've got a gun. You see that bastard over there? He's kind of pointing at Prime, who's sort of carving great chunks out of the spectre with his axe.
Yeah, he was looking for you.
Oh yeah, look, he's cut down a lot of good men and women, a lot of good renegades, and now I've got my chance. I'm gonna blast his sorry ass straight to hell.
Let's go.
Wait, you know a Lord Malachite?
Who?
I guess not. Thought he might be involved somehow in this maelstrom thing. Something we heard, but it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, you keep a hold of that. You take it to Urania. She'll probably let you through. Probably. Now go, you assholes! I got my own job to do. He's starting to like crouch, sort of scamper through the rubble in the rough direction of the firefight.
Yeah, we want to be out of here when Yellow Dog gets that look in his eye. Let's go.
Yeah, he's crazy. He's completely crazy.
The last time I saw him take out a pistol, he just shot somebody immediately. You have no idea how lucky we are.
So, I take it we are. I mean, following Yellow Dog's instructions is very akin to doing what we were doing anyway right now, right? Which is heading for the walls of the Citadel, and I take it we're just going to try and navigate our way through the slowly shattering Shadowlands in order to do this.
Yep, looking out for that shack.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we may have lost Chris. Oh no, there he is. It's all good. So. As you kind of make your way forwards, and we'll like not speed this up, but I won't go into, I've described this environment and the kind of thing that's happening, what you're fleeing from. You think you're relatively close to the Citadel walls now, at least according to your recollections of kind of the geography of the city of Cincinnati. You round a corner, and just one of the things you kind of see on your way, there's like a kind of parkland street corner. And as I say, you can barely see the Skinlands, but here in the Shadowlands, like the kind of grass is sort of a very unhealthy rusted color. All the stones are cracked and the sky is grey overhead. And you can see a small gathering of rather pathetic looking restless around a small monument on that kind of parkland street corner. They're mumbling and chanting incomprehensibly, and one of them is flagellating themselves with some form of relic that resembles a number of leather straps tied together. Parts of their corpus drift off into the nearby grass. These are almost undoubtedly a heretic cult who are quite frequently found among the restless of the Dark Kingdom of Iron. Are we going to like investigate, stop in any way, or just make our way past as fast as possible?
I think keep going.
I think I've had enough problems for one day.
And I think we're running out of time.
Absolutely. While you go past, though, just for my own amusement, at drip feeding a little detail. If any of you feel like you would be like at least looking at them as you go by, with whether with curiosity or whatever, feel free to make a perception plus alertness roll to just see if you notice something. There won't really be of any interest to characters, but might be to you. 2 successes from Tammy. Any from anyone else?
Botch.
Okay. Okay, Ronan. Let's see what we can do with a botch for you. As you pass, you think you know what you think the monument is some kind of very like a very Christian monument, like something a church has put up or something like that. Something kind of like holy, which I guess kind of figures with the tendencies of these heretic cults. And you probably don't kind of, you just chalk it up to kind of usual cultish behavior. Tammy, however, you notice the monument a bit more closely and accurately. It is old and decaying, with sort of classical pillars on each side and a copper plaque facing that's gone to oxidized green. The monument says that it marks the location of where an individual called Israel Ludlow, one of the founders of the city, erected a blockhouse to protect settlers from local indigenous tribes. You notice that the heretic cult is moaning the name Ludlow as you scramble past.
Presumably that means nothing to me, though.
It means absolutely nothing to your characters.
Yep.
Nice bit of color there. I liked it.
Thanks. I knew at this point you were unlikely to engage, but I was like, I've got to put the detail in there. I'll make them roll. And then you could have all botched and I would have just cried a little bit inside. But that's fine. As you carry on scrambling forwards, I would say now that sort of the landscape around you is turning into honestly more like rubble and collapsed buildings than actual buildings. You can barely see even the edges of the outlines of the Skinlands now as it tears away from the underworld. And you know what, Tammy? It's not like I'm not saying this is your vision, but it is at least uncomfortably similar to your vision, and it looks like a kind of sort of like a war-torn landscape of this rubbled wasteland, like an actual no man's land. Ahead of you, you see a patch of mostly collapsed buildings, and in front of that, maybe about 200, 300 meters from where you are, you see the walls. A mixture of panels of strong soul steel and rusting relic iron, melted and hammered together, extending for about 1 kilometer across your view, threading through the blasted Shadowlands. The Skinlands, as I say, is barely visible now, and you're in an odd, almost fantastical landscape as these walls rear up ahead of you. You can see numerous restless kind of all along the top of the walls, and beyond that, the kind of towers and spires of the central necropolis of Cincinnati, kind of built on top of real buildings in the Skinlands to make it even more sort of, they look very gothic with lots of arches and twisted tops and slightly odd dimensions and geometry. Yeah.
Our target's in sight, maybe.
Well, do you want to look like from this distance? You could probably try and spot a shack of some kind.
Yeah.
Anyone that can give a perception plus investigation roll.
I might also send out Decima and Mortar.
Do it
as scouts.
And you know what? What I'm going to do for that then, like rather than figure it in, I'll just drop your difficulty to 5 for that. How about that?
Nice.
4 successes for Brian.
2 of them are 10s. It doesn't do anything, does it?
Not unless you've got a speciality in investigation.
No.
Was it perception plus
4.
Investigation?
It was.
Yeah, 2.
Okay. Well, Brian sees it first. There is indeed what looks like a partially collapsed shack leaning against, sort of made of like battered sheets of metal, leaning against the walls, kind of just a little further over to the left of where you've emerged in this somewhat wrecked landscape. It looks like it will only take a couple of minutes to traverse this landscape, around which you can see no patrols. You can hear like gunfire still behind you, presumably from the fight with the Spectre. But you can't see any. You can see bits and pieces of other restless who are traveling towards the walls of the Citadel. You can see a couple of them trying to scale the walls to no avail, and you can see a large group near the gates of the Citadel who seem to be pleading with other restless on the top of the gates. The gates are very closed.
I'll kind of gesture towards the shack as I've seen it, just to make sure everyone else sees it as well.
Absolutely.
We will beeline for it, I expect.
Absolutely. Is anyone not doing that?
So are we like now walking over basically extremely exposed, very little cover land? Yeah.
What's our tactic with that? Are we trying to stay in as much cover as there is, or are we just going for it?
I'm going to be trying to hop from what little cover there is, hoping that I attract as little attention as possible.
How about the other three?
I think the authorities, as they are, have enough to worry about, and I am just too far gone. I will be taking a direct path.
Sure.
Yeah, does it look like there's no patrols or anything kind of between us and where we're headed?
No, it seems beyond that point now. The clearing has taken place. Now the gates are shut and they're battening down the hatches, as it were.
I think I would also surge forward with Brian.
Yeah.
I'm feeling the pressure.
Given the actions of the other three, Ronan, are you sticking with your plan, or are you...
I will stick with it for a very brief amount of time, just until I see that there are no snipers immediately gunning down Brian and Abby and Tammy.
Yeah, there are not, as they're making their way forward.
Okay,
could everyone roll? I think this is more than just a dash. I think it's like a concentrated bit of running here. So can people give me stamina plus athletics rolls to see how they do with this, please? Which is a whole total of 1 die for Chris. 1 success for Pierre.
1 success.
1 for Abby.
Oh, I could offer a devil.
You're too late. I spent a willpower, and I got 1 success on the back of my willpower.
Fair enough.
I got 5 successes, 2 of which were 10s, and I do have specialties in stamina and athletics.
What are those specialities?
I've got determined for stamina.
Okay, I think that applies. In that case, you can explode your 10. So roll it again, and if it's a success, add it further.
2 more successes on those, but they're not 10s.
Okay. So how many successes is that in total?
7.
7. Okay. Given that, basically, as you're all scrambling for your life across, or well, your unlife, across this no man's land, the ground starts shaking. Small rents open up, casting a sickly blue, grey, and black shades of color, with a multitude of piercing hisses, as though something beneath is releasing some quantity of imperceptible steam. I'm going to say that 5 successes means you are in absolutely 0 danger, and the extra 2 successes means that you can keep 2 of your companions from encountering any of these rents in a negative fashion.
I do know Abby best, so I think Abby would be the obvious one. And
Pierre does have the key.
I was going to say, I think Ronan is probably the other one, partly for that, and also like the last thing I said was, "Come on, Ronan." So I think, so I think Ronan and Abby. Sorry, Brian.
Absolutely, no, that's fine.
Always leaving Brian behind.
Brian, Can you give me a
Always being left behind.
a dexterity plus athletics roll at difficulty 5, please?
Okay. 1 success.
That's fine. You very briefly nearly catch your foot in one of these rents, and then kind of like there's like a collapsed pillar nearby, and you manage to get one hand on it and kind of heave yourself back to your running gait and manage to carry on jogging past the rent, which gives out a huge kind of like forceful gust of some horrible gaseous substance behind you, but essentially you manage to get out of the way of it, which is good. Because literally it was perfectly possible with a combination of dice that would have sent Brian into a harrowing. So that was a fortuitous circumstance. All of you are nearing the shack now, and as you do so, you can see that nearby, you're about maybe 2/3 of the way now. Nearby is a hill of rubble, kind of like a pile of scree, and atop of that kind of pile of rubble, gliding down softly and gently from the sky, is a familiar figure, robed, hooded, carrying a lantern and a scythe. Their kind of like general demeanor is quite weary, and as they touch down to the ground, they sort of slowly wheel their head around, and like you can sense that they are looking at you through the shadows cast by their hood. They are not making any motion towards you or to interact with you, but they're certainly within. You can definitely shout over. They're close enough that you can shout over the gale to them, or go near them should you want to actually interact with the ferryman. They don't appear to have landed to be near you. They have just landed looking very tired, and you are nearby.
Do you have a way in?
The ferryman kind of looks specifically towards you, Abby, and sort of wearily shakes his head, and that voice that you heard before that I described as sounding as if it's written in all capitals says, "I sealed the rift, but too late. It is coming. This is but the stillness afore the fury. The maelstrom is almost upon us all, and at your heels. Find what safety you can." For a short moment, the face underneath the hood is lit by a flare of cerulean light flickering out from the storm front, and you see the countenance of a teenage boy looking at you all, ritually scarred in some kind of spiraling pattern that was meaningful to a people long gone. He looks youthful and innocent, but for his eyes, deep wells of time that seem to barely register your presence with the senses you are familiar with. Without another word, he is aloft, cradling his scythe close and soaring through the air towards where the sounds of gunfire continue to echo through the rumbling of something not quite like thunder.
Oh, that doesn't sound good.
If we survive the day, we can attempt to unpack it all later. Poor kid.
Shack, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
We gotta move.
Okay. You make your way through the remaining rubble between you and the walls of the citadel. You're approaching them now. I haven't really described how high they are. I'd say they're about, they're on the level of maybe a 3 or a 4-story building. So they're quite towering over a single wraith, albeit not, colossally so. And as you near those kind of like mixture of scrambled panels of soul steel and rusting relic iron, the shack is sort of made up of similar bits and pieces. It is very tumble down, but it does have the kind of the remnants of a door that seem to be like fixed into place of an old door frame. that's fixed into place quite well, though, quite firmly.
Well, they said to make a lot of noise, knock 5 times. So, how, would I be able to interact with this? With
it's in the shadow. It's
in the Shadowlands, so it's not like I can't touch it.
No, you don't have to like penetrate the shroud to do it. You're interacting with the Shadowlands.
So. Who is the strongest of us?
Tammy.
I'll
checking. Tammy.
I'll bash it 5 times. Actually, I'm not sure. Brian might have. I'm 3 on strength. I think Brian has
3 on strength as well.
I'm also 3 on strength. Yeah.
Okay.
You have better athletics.
I
why
think
don't you give me a strength plus athletics?
The strongest.
Sure. Why don't you give me a strength plus athletics rolls, just not to achieve the feat of knocking on a door 5 times, but I'm just interested at how loud you can make it. That's all.
Yeah. Whether they hear us from miles away.
What was that? Sorry, Inga? You're on mute. You're on mute.
I think she said 4.
4, yeah.
I also thought she said 4. Yes, you make quite the cacophony on this kind of like hollow sounding metal door, and a great 5 clangs ring out. That, I mean, they are loud, but also there is a colossal gale like thrumming around you as you're doing this. So the four of you definitely hear it very loudly, but you're not sure how much anyone else will. You can't hear anything inside because of that gale and like the ringing in your ears from the banging on the door. But only moments later, the door is kind of like lifted bodily and moved aside, and a hulking figure sort of in there kind of peers out momentarily and then reaches out. And I guess, Tammy, you're at the front, and a big kind of like bear-like paw, not like an actual bear, I just mean big, reaches out and kind of grabs you quite roughly by the shoulder and sort of pulls you in. Not in a damaging way, but like, get in, you know?
Yeah, I'll let myself be pulled in, and if I can, just look behind and grab it and just make sure everyone's following. Yeah.
Okay. That same hand is going to reach out, and as each of you comes in, however fast you're doing it, is going to grab you bodily and heave you forwards with really considerable strength to try and bring you in faster. The figure then kind of lifts up the door and puts it back into place, turns round and gazes at you all through a very slight and flickering electric light from a battered light bulb that's sort of swinging crazily overhead in this really quite small space. He's very large, he's very bulky, and he's wearing a featureless wooden mask and holding a rough, I mean, I've called it a soul steel blade, it's more like a cleaver, which he's sort of like hefting in not a directly aggressive, but certainly a slightly threatening manner. He makes an unpleasant, loud wheezing noise, takes a step towards the walls of the citadel that form the back of this shack, and heaves one panel of it aside, gestures into it with kind of like a racking wheeze, and sort of like if you don't immediately make motions towards it, is going to like sort of raise the cleaver.
Thank you, friend. We're thank you for taking us in from the storm. Yeah. I'll very quickly go in where he's gesturing.
Assume the others are doing the same.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. As soon as you are in the, there is a rough passageway between the panels of the citadel wall. He follows you in behind it and then replaces a loose panel, driving it into place with a hoarse grunt. He kind of essentially drives you down the passageway. If you're not kind of like moving generally as fast as you can, he will come up behind you and just prod you with the cleaver to get you to go faster. Does anyone need this encouragement, or is everyone just hustling?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I will not be safe until I have a cup of ghost tea or whatever we're drinking.
whatever ghosts have. So you emerge into a larger chamber that seems to be within the walls themselves. It's crowded with about a dozen sort of worried-looking restless who almost immediately part to allow the passage of a tall, stately-looking woman. She has her hair tied at the back of her head in a very old-fashioned way, a slightly crumpled, long white dress that is going ragged and bloody at the bottom. She's wearing a very large and elaborate silver necklace, and as she closes with you, you do notice that her eyes, when I say she has crystalline eyes, I mean that quite literally. Her eyes seem to be made of a shimmering, reflective crystal that paces over all of you. Abby, you may have encountered this woman before. In fact, I think you have, because this is Urania, who is someone you have tried to contact as part of your attempts to talk to the old illegal guilds. That's right, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
Have I actually managed to make contact with her?
I'll say you've seen her at a distance before, but never actually managed to interact.
Okay.
She looks over you all coldly and holds her hand out mutely.
Ma'am, my name is Ronan. I was sent here by our mutual acquaintance. I need a guarantee that we are getting to safety.
Safety is hard to come by. Once you have given me the item, you'll be cast out. It matters not to me which direction that might be.
Well, it matters to me.
Well, then you may choose the item.
That is good enough for me, and I will show the item, and I'll offer it.
She kind of gives not because restless don't need to breathe, obviously. She gives out an involuntary intake of breath and holds up the silver watch and sort of examines it very closely with those crystalline eyes. Tell me, is the renegade cast into oblivion or simply doomed to be?
Last we saw was simply doomed. Heading
Very
towards Marshall.
It matters not. Out. The huge towering individual with the cleaver is sort of crowding behind you all again. All the other restless in the room are sort of like leaning forward and looking at this watch, sort of half kind of like worshipfully. A couple of them are kind of like looking awestruck in the original meaning of the word.
Wait. Sorry, I've been trying to move. I've been trying to talk to you for a while, actually.
I know of you.
And?
You are not worthy of my attention. Not yet. Come back much later, little stripling.
I'll allow myself to be pushed out of the room.
Never good enough.
So, essentially the same process happens with the towering individual with that wooden mask. He removes part of the wall of this chamber within the walls, forces you through a narrow passageway, wrenches another panel aside, and shoves you into the Citadel streets. With a last gasping wheeze that sounds almost like laughter, he replaces that final panel and now it looks just like every other part of the walls. And behind the walls, among the kind of crowded old-fashioned buildings, old-fashioned from all different all different time periods within this area of America, I suppose, rather than necessarily before that, but all these varied old buildings tumbled up against each other. You can see a few of those towering necropolis edifices kind of high overhead, but everything else here is absolute chaos. The streets are thronged with restless, and from the walls overhead come shouting and garbled yells. You seem to be sort of nearby the gatehouse on the citadel walls, and there's a kind of an opening, more of a square area. In the center of it, atop a wooden platform that looks more like a gallows than a place of address, stands a wraith wearing a porcelain mask, who is preaching restraint and calm, saying, "You, the citizenry, are in the safety of the necropolis, as safe and warming as the comforting arms of Charon himself." No one is listening. Everyone is panicking. Everyone is either trying to find a place to hide or desperately, feverishly talking to each other to try and get some information, some place of further safety, or desperately trying to retreat further inside the citadel, which is useless because the streets are packed. Some wraiths are kind of like hovering overhead and gliding, trying to get further in. Buildings are not letting people in. In fact, people are leaning out of windows and doors, kind of forcing people from trying to find further shelter inside. You are definitely crowded in this space.
I think once the panel behind us has closed, and once we've kind of got this little bit of maybe negative space before the main throng starts, I'm actually just going to sit down with my back against the door and just have a moment.
Absolutely. Is that a moment like that includes maybe spending some pathos to heal or anything like that? I don't know.
That's a fantastic idea. Does pathos heal lethal though?
Yes, it does.
Okay, perfect. I would also like
to pathos to regain 2 corpus levels.
I would also like to take this opportunity. Maybe if will anyone else kind of sit down with me?
Yeah, I think I might also. It seems like a good idea. I need to rest.
I want to. This one time, the first time we actually got the A site and the B site connected, the switch that ran the connection, the username was user1 and the password was user1. $10 million a day across that thing. I'm going to use my legacy trait off the back of that little micro anecdote to get a chance to roll and get some further healing done.
Go for it.
So this is difficulty 7 on 3 dice, and per success, I get to heal a point.
Is that once per session? That's powerful.
Once per story.
Oh, still good.
And I've got 0 successes.
Oh, poor Brian. 2 rent and torn. Even his memories of what was it? Username 1 or user ID 1 were not enough to repair that. Can anyone else hear that crinkling? Just so I know if I have to stop the cat from doing
a little bit, but it's not. Yeah. I don't think it's too bad.
You're really quiet.
It's not too bad.
I was also going to sort of try and like cast my mind back to a good time spent with Jack, showing him how to like adjust the fit of a suit, just so. And I'm going to roll my memoriam.
To regain pathos, yeah. Is anyone else taking the lull in the moment to do similar kind of rolls?
I'm not going to roll, but I'm going to reach into a pocket and pull out. I've got like a little pocket book with a pen like slotted into it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to write both Brian and Ronan an encouraging note. It's probably just like, "We'll get through this," smiley face, and give it to each of them. What that is basically a reskinning of Avery's sweets, because even sweets are too tweety for Wraith, I think, even though it's in the book, and it gives an additional 2 points of pathos to the Wraith for as long as the sweet note lasts, which is a scene. So
Okay.
you get a nice post-it note and you feel warm and fuzzy for a whole scene.
Sure.
Ah,
I think that's very appropriate because it's quite, I like Wraith things that are slightly maudlin. Because, like, you could feel like things are, like, gratuitously emotional in Wraith, but that's the only reason they still exist. Is because they're beings of pure passion and emotion.
Yeah.
okay. Well, in that case, I will probably use that pathos to try and heal.
Absolutely. I'd say you've got at least a moment. You can spend it points per turn, but let's just say for the purposes of this, you can spend one of those points of pathos and you can regain 2 corpus levels. Tammy, are you doing anything with this brief moment of breath?
Just maybe slightly out loud to Abby saying, she was a bitch, and do you get a horrible feeling that this is not going to be much better in here?
I mean, I didn't want to say it, but
I don't like the way that guy laughed at us. as we
No.
came through. And we can't get out again.
Any wall in a storm. Any wall in a storm.
I don't like how terrified everyone else is around us.
And I don't like the look of those gallows.
I excuse me one moment. I will actually, because the cat is relentlessly trying to dig his way into a bag of biscuits, which is not going to be an evocative background for the events to come. So excuse me.
I believe in you. Cat, you can do it. You can get those biscuits.
Cat,
Press 1 in
roll-
chat to give the cat biscuits.
roll strength versus brawl. No, strength plus brawl.
Well, we have cat distractions. Here's another.
I
Aw.
think maybe intimidation. Maybe might be a good cat technique.
I don't think you can intimidate your way inside a bag of biscuits.
Also, that's a very good cat, Inga.
Potentially. Can you intimidate your way into a bag of biscuits? Cats are more intimidating than bags, right?
We were discussing the potential roles that cat can use to.
Well, they are creatures often associated with shepherding the dead. Just to add to the adorableness of this Wraith the Oblivion session, I thought he was doing what he usually does, which is getting a hold of a current or old biscuit bag and just like just kind of playing with it and kind of gently trying to get into it, never succeeding. But instead, what he was doing was just lying on his side with his legs stretched out and just kind of like playing with it, which was much more adorable. And I was much less annoyed with him once I saw what he was doing. So I just picked up the bag and replaced it with a big soft cushion.
Ah.
And he responded by getting up and getting into the litter tray to have a shit. So
that doesn't make a fun noise.
Fair. It could just be a piss.
Now we're back to Wraith the Oblivion.
But now we're back. Okay. So we are all on the same page here. Events are now going to proceed at a very fast pace. What I'm going to do is read out the events that are happening. And there he goes. And when I pause, and it'll be a significant pause, you guys can, come on, John. You guys can take your, can say what you want to do to react to this scenario. This is an attempt at, this isn't like a whole railroading thing. It's just a lot is going to be happening very quickly. So I don't want to if we're talking over each other, it won't flow as well. So,
yep.
How does that sound? I know how it sounds to someone. Sir?
Accurately capturing the sounds of the thoughts and feelings of despair, I think, as we enter this end game.
Absolutely. So the first indication that things are escalating is that you can hear the howling of that abyssal gale over the rim of the walls above you, just vastly increasing in volume. And there is a sort of still that emerges around you as the restless all kind of like turn around and gaze up at the walls, and kind of stop what they're doing, stop their immediate panicking, and just kind of like gazing upwards in sort of mute desperation. An action you can take for each of you, and it's fine to go, I'm not doing anything, I'm just frozen in terror or something.
I'm going to see if there's an opportunity while people are distracted, if I can get into any of the buildings, or if they're all thoroughly locked. I'm at least going to try a door or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah. Any kind of cover, similar.
Okay, so that it looks like
same.
three of you are nodding there. Like, Chris, are you going to do something similar, or are you doing? Is Brian doing his own thing?
I think I'll just kind of stand up and brace myself with the wall, but definitely wanting to get a better view of what's going to happen next.
Sure, absolutely. Well, Abby, Tammy, and Ronan, and again, not to kind of railroad you, but I mean, there's no chance. There not only are there the buildings being like blocked by the people in them, but also there are packed crowds between you and those. So if anyone's going to get in, it's not going to be you. But if you want, you can try and start wedging yourself into the queues around into like the masses around those places.
I probably won't if it's just so rammed that I can't get through reasonably. I'll just try and like scout out if there's any place of cover that I can see.
Sure.
Yeah, if the only cover is bracing against the wall that we're already up against, then so be it. But,
it is a little bit. There's a couple of nooks across the street where maybe you could like lurk in them a little bit and peek round and have kind of the cover of a building, but still be able to maybe see over the walls or something.
That sounds good.
Yeah. Does that sound like something? Okay. So you can still see Brian, who's like across the street from you, sort of more up at the walls, kind of like looking upwards. And being as you're all kind of like looking over and seeing all that, here are the events that immediately follow, and they happen very fast. Only a few seconds pass from you taking kind of your cover across the street before crackles of light can be seen arcing along the walls. One legionnaire is shouting and wailing of the doom of the citadel until he is dragged off the wall and away. The storm front that has been creeping after you this entire time becomes visible over the wall, even from the ground. And overhead, the figure of the ferryman can be seen circling in the tortured sky. The storm front grinds inexorably onwards and rolls over the edge of the walls, and the ferryman dives like a bird of prey into it. The chatter of relic gunfire is heard dimly through the swirling barrier of the storm front, and then as it passes over the gathering crowd and yourself with a sickening vertigo-like sensation, the world both darkens and slides into a painful clarity. The gunfire is now shockingly loud as you enter into the edge of the maelstrom. The legionnaires on the walls fighting with fire and steel as cackling, twisted shapes clamber up the sheer metal or ride the winds, grasping hungry wings. Somewhere behind you among the spires of the rotting necropolis, an old, decrepit artillery piece roars into life, and each soul steel shell it flings out of the citadel sends dirt and stone and still undulating scraps of spectral plasm hundreds of feet into the air out beyond the walls. You can take an action.
How close was that with these explosions?
They feel like they're some way beyond the walls.
Okay.
Like clearly they're targeting
whatever's outside.
Whatever is coming.
Yeah. No.
You mentioned there is some kind of detritus now with the weight of the storm on the structures of the town. Can I get myself some kind of maybe a soul iron stick or something that might serve as a weapon?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Why don't you roll wits plus alertness to see if you can pick up something that's kind of like tumbled off the walls that you might be able to defend yourself with. Chris is frozen for a second, but I'm sure he'll be back. While we're waiting for Chris's results, what about the rest of you?
I think given sort of hunkered down, probably not something like that to kind of pick up around. So I think maybe just still, hunkering in.
Just
If there wasn't somewhere to
making
run
yourself,
before,
sheltering yourself as much as possible. Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
so, yeah.
Abby, Ronan?
I think I will also try and hunker down. I might sort of lean over and call to Tammy. Are you sure we can't get maybe further away from the walls? You can move fast, right?
It's not really about moving fast. It's about the streets, and you have to move through all the other restless, which unless any of you can fly, which you can't, I don't think.
I don't think that's going to help this time. And that storm feels not safe.
Ronan?
Yeah, I was thinking about using armory, but I can't because it costs too much pathos. So I think I'll just join them in hunkering.
Sure.
So-
Brian, how did you do on that roll?
What was the roll again? Sorry.
It was perception. What was it? Oh, it was wits plus alertness, I think.
Oh.
I think it was wits plus alertness.
Wits plus alertness. Oh, wow. 3 successes.
Yeah, well, you know what? Actually, as you are looking around for something, a soul steel blade, not a fancy one, but a perfectly competent one, tumbles down from the wall. You don't know why, but someone, it looks like a Legionnaire's blade, and it's just tumbled to the ground in front of you.
Well, I'm not going to think too much on its reason for being here. I'm just going to take it and move over to the rest of the group.
Absolutely. You scramble in beside them, giving yourself a better view of outside. And speaking of that view from outside, from over the walls that you can see even from here, some kind of even darker barrier is growing out there, like a far worse kind of replication of that initial bubble of the storm front that grew over the city. An even darker barrier is out there now, growing and growing fast further into the gathering maelstrom. It is rushing for the walls, a tidal wave speeding inexorably forward. Visible within it is a colossal shape turning and twisting as another much smaller figure flits around it through the air. A figure with a glow around it, like a lantern battering desperately at the rising dark. A pulse begins, a pulse rising through the ground, sending broken scraps off the wall and the buildings all around, ricocheting off into anyone nearby. The restless sprawl and scramble or lie curled up in balls all around. The remnants of the Legionnaires still fighting on with a furious desperation. That pulse rumbling from below without any kind of recognizable rhythm reaches a crescendo that thunders like the heartbeat of a mad god. And then the darker wall within the maelstrom comes howling over the citadel. You have one action, and it has to be fast.
I will turn to the others and I will say, guys, it's been a pleasure.
Oh, crap. Tammy, can you fight with a blade?
Frankly, I think I'm better with my fists.
Abby? Ronan? I did a day course once.
This is entirely too much. It's like really short seconds before the next events happen. I'd say the beginning of that, like Brian proffering the blade to Tammy, can definitely be achieved.
She'll get fists ready then as the response on that.
Sure. Have we had anything from Abby?
I will take Ronan's hand.
Okay.
Thanks.
A sickening wave passes into and through you, every molecule screaming as the servants of Oblivion cry out with an awful yearning, a craving to drag everything that has ever lived into an utter annihilation. You can feel them somewhere impossibly distant, down in the very depths of fragile existence, but also somehow right here at this very moment. The Neverborn. Things that cannot be, and yet lay dreaming of nothingness in the furthest reaches of the labyrinth. You have never wanted anything more with such single-minded certainty as to never again feel their eyes upon you as you do now. It is only in this moment that you truly understand the words of the ferryman, as the citadel walls tumble and the underworld turns to flashes of awful light and sound. The maelstrom is upon you. And that's the end of our Wraith the Oblivion arc.
I'm dead twice.
No, not necessarily.
You're in the
Fate
midst
of our
of a
circle.
maelstrom.
Our circle is in
getting
a
my
very
shadow
bad
back.
circumstance, but their fate is so far unwritten.
You're saved, John. Oh, I was gonna shadow things up here.
I mean,
Wow.
Oh my god.
oh, that's great. Yeah,
Right.
The ending.
Wraith survived this. There are Wraith who've survived the previous maelstroms.
Yeah, Wraith survived maelstroms. I mean, ultimately, the fate of most Wraiths within a maelstrom is to be dragged into a harrowing. And Wraiths do come back from harrowings all the time. It is only usually the accumulation of multiple harrowings that eventually winnow a Wraith down to nothingness and to oblivion. But yes, Wraiths survive maelstroms.
Yep.
But I wanted to make it clear that like a maelstrom isn't just, like I wanted to lead that with like description of almost like a siege, like a battle erupting, but then the actual maelstrom comes and it's like nothing you could possibly imagine.
Not like a battle.
Like
It's
it's a conflict, but like an existential, soul-wrenching conflict, not just this pseudo-physical thing in the Shadowlands.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I
There we go.
appreciate you giving us hope, Abby, at the end.
That was nice.
That
was such a nice
so
touch.
nice. That was amazing.
That was nice. So there we go, folks. That's Wraith the Oblivion. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit now at the end because we are finishing a bit earlier than we normally do. And we'll talk about Wraith and we'll talk about our thoughts and probably a little bit about the Cincinnati Chronicles more broadly. So I would say if you've only watched Wraith and you're planning on watching the other arcs, there probably will be some spoilers thrown in here from like other series, so just be aware of that. But if anyone has any comments or questions, please throw them in the chat. And as you do that, I'll get the boring promo out of the way. Links below: YouTube, Twitch. You're watching on one, please check out the other. Links to our social media, our Patreon, our Discord. We run 3 series currently. Monday is Warhammer, Wednesday is Into the Odd, and Thursday is Cincinnati Chronicles, which will be taking a break next week, and then we'll resume probably the week after or sometime after that with Changeling the Dreaming, which is the final in our 5 arc series within the Cincinnati Chronicles. So please join us for that. For the first time in Cincinnati Chronicles, we'll be losing Pierre, who has been with us for all first 4 stories, but we'll be getting Holly back. So yes, that will be good. We also run one-shots monthly. The last one was Morkborg a week and a half ago. That's starting to emerge on YouTube now. And the next one is this Saturday. That's Saturday, the 2nd of July, starting at 3 p.m. BST. It's Absurdia, which is a wonderful kind of absurd modern fantasy weirdness thing. Kind of like the vibe I got from it was Twin Peaks meets Beetlejuice.
Yep.
So that was
Going to be
the
very
vibe I got from it.
strange.
Very strange. And lovely Pierre down here will be running that. And also, these 2 equally lovely people on either side of me, John and Inga, will be taking part alongside Justin. So tune into that. It should be good. That's this Saturday. Okay, before we get into any of the sort of just our talking about it, have we got any comments or questions, John? Wraith hasn't been very popular, so people haven't tended to be lurking in chat, so we might not have too much.
It's funny that I really can't.
Who'd have thought that the really
I know we have to
depressing
build a
one
best of 5, but having played Demon, I don't understand because these are the 2 runts of White Wolf's oeuvre, aren't they? Demon and Wraith.
I wouldn't say that. I'd say like it depends what you mean by. I think Wraith is probably the least played, but also the most critically acclaimed. So
You see, that's a real bad sign.
Lots of people
like a piece
like Demon, and they are not people like me because I hate Demon.
It's fun because I obviously like I wasn't really familiar with the White Wolf stuff, but I've subsequently like looked at like how people talk about Wraith and stuff. One of the most common things I've seen is people are like, I really love the concept of Wraith. I think it's like an amazing, really cool, like load of like the world and everything. I really
but it's
love
unplayable.
But I've never played it, and I never and I'm not sure I would. And it's like I think it's because it's very. It could be very difficult on players if you take it like, really seriously.
With that almost slight elements of PvP to it and stuff like that.
I think that's interesting though, because I think that because I had the same feeling, and obviously I didn't really know what I was kind of getting into going into it. But I think my impression was it's much harder on the GM, because my impression from reading all this stuff and all this interesting world building and everything was, this is really cool. How on earth do you build a story around this that has like meaningful story arcs and stuff? If there is this kind of, and I think you did a great job of it, by the way, Matt.
Thank you.
And I really enjoyed playing it. For me, it's totally. If I was thinking, right, I want to go play some offline games on this, I don't know how. Like, if I was going to go and find a group and GM it or something, I don't know what I would be doing story wise that kind of fits thematically. But I really enjoyed playing it. That I feel like was the major challenge for me. Yeah,
it's definitely. It's the arc I've had the most difficulty with in terms of planning and just coming up with a story and stuff. And I think it's quite apparent that it's definitely linked in with the meta plot for sure. Like you've shared scenes and had encounters and things. I think it's definitely probably, if we're just watching these 5 arcs, I think Wraith is probably the one you could strip from the arc series and miss the least, if that makes sense. Because it's taking place effectively in almost a different world from the rest of it in the Shadowlands. It's definitely the one I had the most difficulty writing. Definitely.
The PvP thing that you mentioned as well, I think is kind of interesting, because I actually really enjoyed it. And it's definitely a bit harder in that you're kind of playing 2 characters and you've got to remember a couple of extra things like on your character sheet. And, like I had a couple of moments last week where I was sort of scrambling a bit too late to kind of do the shadow things. I was just like enjoying it, like almost as a not in the scene. Maybe I should be in the scene. And like so that's a little bit different, because I also do enjoy like just watching you guys play as well. And he's not doing something. But that's also really fun, because I was actually thinking like. I think the way we've done it, I think has been good as well. But like I was thinking you could have a much more, and maybe these systems exist somewhere and I'm just not familiar with them. You could have a much more like absurdist or surreal or very lighthearted, silly kind of system that has a similar, like maybe you're playing each other's conscience, or where you can kind of troll each other a bit more without it, and just sort of take the piss out of each other a bit, and have a bit more of a light-hearted version of a similar thing, which I think would be quite fun. So there's loads of stuff I liked about it. It's definitely more complex, but I actually did really, really like it.
And it's like, I'll plant my flag here. I didn't think I did a fine job of telling it in the context of the Cincinnati Chronicles, but I think we've probably missed a lot of what Wraith you should technically be doing within Wraith. Within this, I don't think we've done the most accurate job of playing Wraith, but it kind of. It's one of the areas in which, for anyone out there who hasn't tried it before, streaming a role-playing game is very different from sitting down and playing a role-playing game with your friends. You're trying to perform as much as you're trying to just have fun within the game. So there's elements of it you don't want to stop to look at rules. You don't want to like stop the pace of it, and all this kind of stuff. So there's probably a lot of stuff we've missed, which might be the stuff that builds that friction that prevents people from wanting to play the game as much. So maybe it's like that. I think as well, because of the lore and the setting of Wraith, a lot of it can be left. I think if you play Wraith with different storytellers, you'll get a very different experience. Because unlike World of Darkness, like vanilla, as it were, which is described very well in the books and very that gothic-punk aesthetic, and everyone can kind of imagine that. How do you imagine the Shadowlands? And I think everyone will imagine it quite differently. So different storytellers will describe it in different ways. Like the thing I described of like the maelstrom, like sort of tearing the Shadowlands from its moorings of the Skinlands. That's not canon. That's just me imagining how a maelstrom might work. So other storytellers might have constructed it completely differently. I think the shadows would work very differently offline as well, just because of it's much easier. We talk quite fast and we act quite fast on stream because we don't want to lose the audience, right? Such as there is for Cincinnati Chronicles. We do appreciate those of you who are here. Yeah, so I think that may be part of it. I mean, Steve's question has been on screen now. We haven't mentioned it yet, but we are so effectively answering it now. How complex did you find Wraith in the end, both in terms of playing and integrating with the overall story? I think myself and Inga have talked a fair bit on this now. How about someone else want to proffer their opinion?
I mean, the large undercarriage of it is the same as standard World of Darkness. I find the Arcanoi a bit more clunky. There are extra trackers to keep track of.
Yeah.
Because it's not just like blood and willpower anymore. It's now willpower and pathos and angst and too many things. And the troop play element of it kind of gets me because I'm like, something's happening and I don't know which character I should be thinking about playing.
Sure,
There was a moment last week where Ronan was in trouble, and it's like I spent so much time thinking as Abby, what should I do to help my circle mates, that I didn't have space for I'm a shadow. What should I do to dick with Ronan?
I think that's fair, and it's worth actually pointing out that, especially, I can't remember them in previous editions so much, but especially in the 20th anniversary edition, which is what we're running here, it actually, from the ground up, describes 3 different options for shadows. One is to do what we're doing now, which is the kind of traditional version, and the only one we really could have done on this stream. The other is that the GM just plays all the shadows, which that's a lot of work. And the other one is you literally have an extra player at the table called a shadow guide who plays all the shadows. I really like that. And I think if I was running offline, I'd do that, as long as one person did want to take that role.
Just to address...
I was going to say, with all of the gripes I aired, I have quite enjoyed this, but it's just extra admin.
Yeah, extra mental load.
A little bit too much for me personally.
Yeah, that's perfectly fair. Chris?
I'll be honest, everyone knows my opinions on Wraith, but to kind of addressing the question, no system could more perfectly embody the concept of the exact opposite of Rules Light than Wraith, both in terms of the kind of the systemic complexities, but also in terms of the setting complexities, because all the White Wolf games have a kind of the entire concept of the World of Darkness is laying a superset on top of the world you're familiar with and playing within that superset. It's a bit darker, it's a bit grimmer, but and that was kind of in Vampire, it was just basically like goths are legitimately spooky. In Werewolf, there is an entirely different scary world. In Mage, like the reality is the scale of the detachment from reality kind of ramps up as they move through the cycle of their kind of work, and they get to Wraith, and it's just like there's a full Silmarillion and a half worth of proper nouns that are introduced in the first 200 pages of this book, which is how far you have to get through before you start seeing any rules. So it's just a lot. It is, and I certainly think it could be a lot of fun, but my gosh,
you have to work for it.
Yeah, I got to say, I think we're very lucky as well in that, Matt, you do a really good job of prepping us for it and giving us pointers on the core sections to read from the books and stuff, because I definitely have not read it cover to cover, and I don't feel like that's impeded my enjoyment of playing it. And I've come to stuff like Telling Tales from things like D&D, which there's a lot of clunky or a lot of crunchy number calculations and stuff like that. So this still feels pretty light by comparison to having to think about a bunch of different spell lists or different kind of interactions on that kind of stuff. Like the addition of pathos and angst and stuff. It definitely is more thinking of a whole other character and stuff. But
it's basically the mechanics are less complex, but there's way more of them.
Yeah, and I think
wider.
Yeah, and I think that some of the stuff I found probably trickier is not strictly mechanic stuff, but it was even just things about remembering like what are the passions and what are the my the person who I'm shadowing, like their passion, and stuff. So it's not even about like the actual mechanics of it. It's just kind of, do I have an opportunity to influence that somewhere? Which I think would maybe be different in an offline or like a more ongoing game as well, because we've got a bit more tight storylines, so maybe don't explore all of those things quite as much.
Absolutely. And like the thing about these arcs as well is that like I'm not only doing like tight little 4-episode arcs, but like I'm trying to introduce the world of them, both to the audience and to like a bunch of the players as well, for whom it's their first thing. I think like for anyone who hasn't watched the beginning, Chris has a fair amount of experience with World of Darkness. John does as well. Pierre's got a little bit, and he's played Vampire before. But Inga and Holly came to it completely fresh, I think. So there's a lot of kind of load going on there. Pierre, I don't think you've spoken up on Wraith yet. What do you want to have your say?
I was going to say one thing that I really love about Wraith, which is surprisingly new school, is the troop play aspect of it. And I don't know if you felt this, Matt, but like, so I know that there's a common problem that GMs sometimes have, which is where they feel like they're the enemy of the players. And sometimes it's not even like that the GM feels this. Sometimes it's that the players feel like the GM is the baddie because he's playing all the baddies and he's stopping us from succeeding. Or, and like, I think one of the great things about the shadow play is it goes, hey, players, here is like, your job is to help the GM when the GM is trying to screw over the players. And so I really like that kind of like detachment a little bit from like pure self-interest, where you are just going, actually, what would be dramatically interesting? And it gets you like, I don't know, at least for me, it gets me in that kind of headspace of thinking about, the theatrical aspect of it. And also just like, it makes me more empathetic towards the GM, I think. And it's funny because it feels to me a lot more like a lot of these, like the Absurdia and the Powered by the Apocalypse kind of things, which get into a lot more that kind of approach. But it was doing it obviously many, many years prior, but in its own kind of way. But it was kind of coming to the same
super innovative, really innovative. Which is something I think that White Wolf don't get enough credit for, certainly nowadays, because they're seen as retro now. It's retro edgelord gaming and stuff, and talking about feelings and shit. And like, I don't think they get enough credit, because I'm not saying that like lots of developments that are quite commonplace in indie RPGs now wouldn't be there if White Wolf hadn't done them first, because someone would have thought of them. But like a lot of them, I think, have their roots in that 90s White Wolf movement in a way that it doesn't necessarily get the credit for nowadays, because everyone's too busy going 90s goths. I agree. I would also say that I think Inga mentioned like troop play could be interesting in other like more light things. Or I can't remember who said that. The only other game I own at all that has troop play in it, dedicated troop play, is called Carolina Death Crawl, and it does what it says on the tin. So that's not lighthearted. However, I have there is another game I've wanted to run on the channel for a while, which is actually by the same people who make Carolina Death Crawl, Bully Pulpit Games, who also make Fiasco. Do they make Fiasco or something else? Yeah, they're Fiasco, right? Yeah, Jason Morningstar. And it's a game he made a long time ago called the Shab al-Hiri Roach. And I wanted to turn that into a kind of troop play style game for a while and run it on the channel. And the concept of it is you are a group of 1920s professors at a university in America trying to get tenure, and competing with each other to get tenure. And while this is happening, the faculty of the university is slowly being taken over by a mind-controlling ancient insect. It's hilarious, and we need to play it on the channel at some point for sure. Anyway.
Yeah, it's funny you kind of mentioned as well, because I've dabbled a bit with a bit of GMing here and there, but like I am not like, I know some of the people in the Telling Tales crew, make games and like make their own systems and stuff like that. I've never had any real interest in that at all, but this was the first time where I thought, I wonder if I could adapt something for another slightly different kind of setting or whatever, that would maybe be a bit more lighthearted or silly or what have
Yeah.
you. But yeah, and I'm sure there must be something out there that exists. If anybody does know of it, like, please do share. I would love to have a read of it.
There is
Google, right? But,
I actually tell a lie. I do have another slight troop play game, which is Only War, which is one of the Fantasy Flight 40k games, which is not lighthearted, obviously, because it's 40k. But it's the game where you play Imperial Guardsmen, and you have backup characters that are kind of followers / NPCs that you can also play a little bit, because you're gonna need them when your character gets like decapitated by an orc, or eaten by a horrible chaos demon, or shot from a distance of 1 kilometer by an Eldar sniper or something. So yeah, which is fun. Anyway, that's probably enough direct delving into our analysis of Wraith. What other comments?
There's one other great comment there from 42, which I think is.
I think John probably has those starred. So do you want to? 42. What is a harrowing? I did mention that in this session. I think I explained it back in the first one, but I haven't mentioned it since then. Essentially, a harrowing is what happens when a wraith. A number of things can cause a wraith to go into a harrowing. So if one of their fetters is destroyed, or if their corpus is torn apart, i.e. their kind of spectral form, or a number of other circumstances, maybe one of their passions being eliminated as well, they are dragged down into the labyrinth deep below the underworld, to very close to Oblivion itself, and they are tormented in a kind of hell of their own internal devising by specters and other agents of Oblivion, until they figure some way out of it, like an existential escape room. And every time they do this, it does damage them kind of spiritually and physically. And eventually the likelihood is they will not survive one of these harrowings, and it will result in their annihilation and passing into Oblivion. But that is what harrowing is. If we remember back to the beginning of the second episode in the library, when all the wraiths' fetters were being burned up and like they were being dragged down into rents in the ground, they were entering harrowing. That was what was happening to them. So yeah. Is there going to be an arc after Changeling? I've dodged this question up till now, and I'm not going to completely answer it just yet, but I put, or at least give full details. But okay, so after Changeling, we're going to take a break, and the break will be quite a while. That will probably have an interim story or stories in it in some fashion, hopefully from other GMs, because let me tell you, streaming 2 games a week is quite a lot when you've got a full-time job as well. After a certain amount of time, which may be quite a while, like months rather than weeks, we will return to the Cincinnati Chronicles for a 6th arc. I'm not going to say any more than that.
Can I nerd out about how excited I am to get on to Changeling? Almost the exact opposite of Wraith in almost all meaningful ways, but also a absolute tome of a book where you have to spend about 200 pages getting through the lore before you get any kind of systemic descriptions. But unlike Wraith, I am delighted to get into this weird mockery of Northern European traditional objects and entities and stories.
Sure. More than just Northern European, but a lot of it is. Yeah. And a lot, as you have pointed out, a lot of it is Irish. It'll be fun. It will feel very different. 42 again. Ghosts just drink the memory of tea like the skeleton in The Last Unicorn.
Oh, absolutely. God. I'm sad because I've remembered The Last Unicorn.
Have we got any other comments? If we don't, I want to just briefly delve into some Cincinnati Chronicles meta talk, because I want to jab my players a little bit, and John, if they make a Wraith RPG, get the Disco Elysium crew on it, because they do amazing work on the Harrowings. I think that's fair enough. I haven't played far enough into Disco Elysium to. Do you just mean the general internal monologue of the?
I've had interactions in Disco Elysium where I've had 10 or 15-minute arguments with my inner monologue.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. That sounds fair enough.
Cool. That's everything, I think.
So Cincinnati Chronicles, obviously this Wraith arc had some references to other things that happen, other kind of like elements of other stories. There's obviously every single arc has had a Spindrift Diner moment and some kind of interaction with Marshall. Who knows when that'll pay off? So there's that. Obviously, we had a reference this very session to Ludlow, who we know is the prince of the vampires of Cincinnati. What other stuff? Obviously, we had a crossover scene essentially in the public library, and you met the small boy wraith who you also met as mages in that arc. I'm trying to think of anything else that we've had. Is there anything else that happened within Wraith as a crossover or anything?
That little mention by the roadside with the cult near the end.
Oh yeah, I just mentioned that one.
Did you?
Ludlow is the prince. Yeah.
I mean, we saw Pierre's mage, I guess, as well.
Oh yeah, doing the time dance. Yeah. And obviously, you saw the specters a bit clearer that get dragged off to possess the individuals inside the gas station, which led to literally the events of the very first session of Cincinnati Chronicles. And some scary spook stories from the Mage arc as well.
I haven't noticed any more that you've put in, but in my head, Pierre, one of Rupert Evers' books, probably the first one, was turned into probably a direct-to-TV movie with an up-and-coming star who then went mysteriously missing.
I like that. For the Pierre's Nosferatu from the first one, I like that a lot. There's a couple of things, and after I think the last couple, I've also asked this of you, and no one seems to have picked up on anything just yet. Is there anything about the name Lord Malachite that means anything, links anything in any way?
Is malachite some sort of stone or precious
It
stone?
is.
Right? Like
It's green stone,
green,
right?
Yeah.
It's green, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which I'm assuming is that, but beyond that, I don't have any.
Didn't we find an office door for Mr. Green?
Mr. Hunter.
Oh, that was it. It's still a form of green.
Yeah, Hunter Green. That is a form of green, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, is that? Oh.
And also, didn't someone have a vision of him wearing his robes in that office? Yeah.
His green robes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Seems about right.
Yeah, there's a lot of green things.
Can anyone else remember another name from Vampire who set some individual you never met who set the entire plot running that you never located?
I know there was a name. The only name I can remember is Lincoln.
Lincoln's a kind of green.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
It is, yeah.
leave something for the fan community to work out, man. Oh, that's really good.
Oh my
I'm
God.
sure it's all a coincidence.
Probably.
Can't be anything linking all of these things.
Matt is famous for not entirely over-engineering all of his work to have incredibly consistent references to other media and its own media.
So this, I mean, to be fair, I think we came out of Mage with the vague idea that this marauder you were after was manipulating a lot of the things that were happening over the course of this day in Cincinnati. But yeah, it's just a bit odd, isn't it, that all these names of these individuals who've sort of set these things in motion are all types of green.
Steve's comment as well. Yeah.
I'm
Same.
still trying to figure out the meaning behind the arc titles. I wouldn't say there are any like plot details that are revealed by them, but they're definitely Easter eggy in that they're like literary references or various other things. I'm happy to go through them now and talk through them if people want. I know we're running a bit late, but I'm perfectly happy to. I think like we maybe discussed a couple in the vampire one at the beginning. So the vampire one is called My Brother's Keeper, right?
Yeah.
Which is a reference in a number of ways, in that was essentially your role within the story, in that you were trying to find another vampire and like stop them from, you were your brother's keeper, like, that kind of thing. It's also a biblical reference. I am not my brother's keeper is the response of a certain individual to God when he asks where his brother is. That individual being Cain, who is, according to kindred mythology, the first vampire. So that was a little thing. Again, not linked to the meta plot or anything. Just I enjoyed nerding out by doing that. The name of the second series, the Werewolf series, is Giver of Gifts, which is an ancient Greek term for the mother goddess Gaia, who the werewolves revere, but also could be seen as a reference to the corporation sending out free, tainted, corrupted worm gifts to orphan children. Because Giver of Gifts is often also a term for kind of satanic influences and demonic influences, and Sauron, if we're going further literary as well. The third one is called At First Was Chaos, with chaos spelt in an ancient Greek fashion. I think I'll leave off on explaining that one for the moment, because maybe it is, I don't know, maybe it will. I don't know. I'll leave that one for now. And this series has been called This Rough Magic. Does anyone know that reference? It's quite a direct one.
I don't think I do. No.
Oh,
No.
None of you did a certain Shakespeare play at GCSE, clearly.
No.
It is from The Tempest.
Because, yeah.
If anyone is not aware of The Tempest, one of the main characters of The Tempest is a sorcerer, a mage called Prospero, who via his actions causes a horrible, catastrophic tempest to be unleashed upon innocent people.
Can't see the relevance to what's just happened.
I think you've missed it on that one. That one's just totally irrelevant.
Yeah. But his works are referred to as these rough magics. So that's why there. Yeah, I'm a nerd. And look, if you think that's bad, don't even start on how I named the Coriolis series, because that was nerdy. That was very, very nerdy. So there we go. There we go. Oh, and if anyone, there was another real life Cincinnati reference in one of the characters in this. And it was a reference I'd maybe roughly only expect John to get, but even then, like, it's pretty roundabout and difficult. So I'm imagining no one picked up on that.
I have a feeling it might have been something to do with Yellow Dog, but I couldn't.
It absolutely was Yellow Dog.
Is he another wrestler?
Yellow Dog is one of the original wrestling names of a wrestler called Brian Pillman.
Oh.
Who is from Cincinnati and died a long time ago now, about 25 years ago. And became Yellow Dog. And famously did a wrestling promo where he got a gun out. And the interviewer exclaimed, "Pillman's got a gun. He's got a gun." And he said the exact line that I used, which is, "I'm going to blast his sorry ass straight to hell." Talking about another wrestler. It was very controversial and it got like reprimanded by the TV networks and stuff. But he's remembered for his very he was kind of edgy in wrestling before wrestling had its edgy patch. He was kind of a pioneer.
He's also something of a tragic figure in behind the stage, behind the
sort of, like, he was very attached to his kayfabe, and a lot of people thought he was really on the edge, but he kind of wasn't. He was just playing the role, as far as I can tell. But he did. I think he died of, like, a lot, because he died young. A lot of people were like, "Oh, I think it was a congenital heart defect. He just died."
I think because he was the focus of one of the first Dark Side of the Rings, wasn't he?
Yeah, but I think that was the controversy over. There was other stuff to do. I think he maybe had a bit of a history, but he's not as dark a figure as those elements, like the dying young and the gun and stuff, might suggest. But yeah, another Cincinnati wrestling reference. Is Marshall also a type of green? Maybe not.
Okay.
I have a huge amount of appreciation for the densely packed nerdiness in all the wonderful flavors that you've brought to this mat. It's just beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you. I would say regarding martial being a type of green, just to avoid people going, oh, that's definitely the thing, I will say I put, I think, 2 other characters in this and called them that and used the names, and then only later realized they were also types of green. So just to leave that one open. There are two characters who've been mentioned multiple times, and that was after that I'd already had scenes with them, and I went, "Oh shit!" Now everyone's going to think that. So I'll just leave.
So you threw in some green herrings, is what you're saying?
Oh no!
Yes.
Unwittingly, yes, indeed, green herrings. Thank you, John.
Throw in the
Tip to the audience: don't eat green herrings.
To clarify, marsh green is a shade of green.
Oh, is it marsh green? Is there
I
a marshal
believe it is.
green?
I'll check. Let's see.
We're going to start looking at it and be like, oh shit, there's actually a Tammy green and a Ronan green and a Ronan green. Ah!
I gave very serious thought before this entire thing started that one of you was going to be the big bad. And they were going to be the big bad masquerading as different people in every story.
This could still technically
It didn't
be
happen.
true.
It didn't happen. Just to settle out, it didn't.
There is not a Marshall Green, but there is an actor called Logan Marshall Green, and a company that rents out electric generators called
It's all
Marshall Green.
connected.
These are 2 deep cuts for me, I will say. I can exclusively reveal at your search that there is no Marshall Green. When someone who said it in chat, sorry, 42, when 42 said it, in my head I was like, oh, I think there is a Marshall Green. I guess I better vamp on this one. Marshall is not named for the green, so I haven't gone deep cut with the whatever with the actor or whatever.
Is he named for some other sort of nefarious connection to all these weird?
His name is absolutely a reference.
God. I mean, we've just got to start expecting this from you now, Matt. I'm sorry.
Yeah, almost every character in this is some kind of reference because that's just how I roll.
Marsh Green is also a village in Devon.
I was gonna say, also, then Urania, like the crystal eyes and stuff. Is this like a Wraith or World of Darkness thing
that's a Wraith World of Darkness thing. She is a advanced practitioner of Nemoi, the Arcanoi, and advanced practitioners of that. Part of them turns reflective or crystalline. And I based all the advanced users of Arcanoi who you've encountered: Emily Perfect, Tariq, Urania. If you go to Wraith the Oblivion 20th edition and look at the splash pages, and they each have a picture of like a practitioner of them, they're just them. I've just used them as a base. In fact, if I share,
such a good trick, and that's not the first time you've picked artwork.
No, I like using good art as like inspirations for stuff. So if we bring up that on screen, there's Urania, who is the illustration for what is it? Nemesis? I can't remember what the name of it is.
Noisis? No,
Nemesis. Yeah, whatever. It's a difficult one. But if we go to monitors, there's Emily Perfect. And if we go to maskers, if it scrolls, there's Tariq.
Very cool.
They're just really cool pictures, so I thought I'd use them as inspiration. And it's great because all the little details an artist has put in there, you get for free. Like, I didn't have to think of the cool, like, you know, Tariq's got this cat's cradle that he works around as a little cool quirk to throw in. The artist thought of it, and I just stole it. So, yeah.
Excellent.
There we go. Cool. All right, folks. Thank you for bearing with us on that one. We finished early, and then we went late with the fun chats about Wraith and Cincinnati Chronicles. So, like I say, there won't be any Cincinnati Chronicles next week, and also for those people who watch Into the Odd, there also won't be an Into the Odd next week because one of us is away, and we'd rather have everyone there for the finale. So I'm getting a week off next week, so I'm quite happy about that. But after that, at some point, I'm not sure Changeling will be in the week immediately after, but in the next couple of weeks beyond that, we will start Changeling the Dreaming, our final arc in this bundle of the anthology of Cincinnati Chronicles, which is definitely one of my favorite things I've ever run. I hope people who are watching are enjoying. Until then, stay safe, take care, and don't become a wraith. Try not to do that.
Goodbye.
It's bad.
Yeah, try not to die.